Cambridge University. January 1963. A 21-year-old graduate student is walking up the stairs to his dormitory. He trips, falls. Not unusual, he's been clumsy lately. But then he drops his pen during a lecture. Can't hold his fork at dinner. His speech starts slurring. His mother notices during Christmas break. Something is wrong. The doctors run tests. Lots of tests. And then they sit him down with news that will change everything. You have ALS, Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. You have 2 years to live, maybe less. His name is Stephen Hawking, and he's about to become the most famous scientist since Albert Einstein, despite his body completely shutting down. This is not a story about dying. This is a story about living, truly living, when your body is betraying you. This is about a woman who married a dying man and gave him 3 children. This is about losing your voice and finding a way to speak to the entire world. This is about writing the most famous science book of the 20th century using only a cheek muscle. This is Stephen Hawking's complete story. And it begins with the most devastating words a 21-year-old can hear. Stephen William Hawking was born January 8, 1942, in Oxford, England, exactly 300 years after Galileo's death, as he liked to point out. He was brilliant, but not exceptionally so as a child. Messy. Disorganized. His handwriting was terrible. His teachers complained they couldn't read it. He got the nickname Einstein at school, but it was half mockery. He got into Oxford at 17 to study physics. Breezed through it with minimal effort. By his own admission, he worked about an hour a day. Partied. Rode crew. Was popular but aimless. Then he went to Cambridge for graduate work in cosmology. That's when everything changed. October 1962. Stephen is 20 years old. He starts stumbling, dropping things. His words slur occasionally. He assumes he's just clumsy, maybe drinking too much. During Christmas break, his mother Isabel sees him struggle to get out of a chair. She insists on tests. January 1963. The diagnosis comes back. ALS, motor neuron disease. Your nerve cells die. Your muscles stop working. You become paralyzed. Lose the ability to move, to speak, to swallow, to breathe. Average life expectancy after diagnosis, 2 to 5 years. Stephen was given 2 years. He was 21 years old. His life was supposed to be just beginning. Instead, he was told it was ending. Most people would spiral into depression. Give up. Wait to die. Stephen did spiral briefly. What was the point, he thought. Why finish my PhD if I'll be dead before I get the degree? He had nightmares about dying, about suffocating, would wake up gasping for air. But then there was Jane Wilde, a languages student, bright, strong-willed, beautiful. They'd met at a New Year's party in 1963, right before his diagnosis. After the diagnosis, Stephen tried to push her away. I'm dying, he told her. You should find someone else. Someone with a future. Jane's response changed everything. I love you, and I want to marry you. They got engaged. His doctors thought she was naive. His colleagues thought she was in denial. Some people thought she was crazy. But Jane saw something they didn't. She saw the man, not the disease. And she made a choice. I wanted to find a purpose, Jane later said. And I found it in Stephen. I wanted to give him something to live for. July 14, 1965. Stephen and Jane get married. Stephen is 23. He's already walking with a cane. His speech is slurred. His prognosis? Still 2 years. Except now it's been 2 years since the diagnosis. He's already outlived the prediction. Marriage gave Stephen purpose. Before the diagnosis, I'd been bored with life, he later said. But facing death made me realize life was worth living. And Jane gave me a reason to keep going. They moved into a small flat in Cambridge. Jane helped him with everything, getting dressed, eating, bathing. She also helped with his work, typing equations he could no longer write. In 1967, they had their first child, Robert. Doctors had said Stephen might not live long enough to see children. But here was his son. In 1970, their daughter Lucy was born. In 1979, their third child, Timothy. 3 children. Stephen Hawking, who was supposed to die in 2 years, had 3 children. But the disease kept progressing. By the late 1960s, Stephen needed a wheelchair. He could no longer walk at all. By the early 1970s, his hands were failing. He couldn't write equations on paper anymore, something essential for a physicist. So he learned to do everything in his head. visualize equations, work through complex mathematics mentally. His colleagues were astonished. Most physicists need to write things down. Stephen didn't have that option. So he developed an extraordinary ability to think in pictures, to see mathematical relationships spatially. In some ways, losing his ability to write made him a better physicist. By the late 1970s, his speech was deteriorating badly. Only people close to him, Jane, his children, his graduate students, could understand him. Giving lectures became nearly impossible. But Stephen kept working, kept teaching, kept thinking. And then came 1985, the year everything changed again. Summer 1985. Stephen is traveling in Switzerland for a physics conference. He's 43 years old. He's already far exceeded his 2-year prognosis. It's been 22 years. Then he contracts pneumonia. His condition deteriorates rapidly. He can't breathe. His lungs are failing. Jane gets a call. He's dying. You should come. Doctors perform an emergency tracheotomy, cut a hole in his throat, insert a tube to help him breathe. It's the only way to save his life. The procedure works. Stephen survives. But there's a cost. A permanent cost. The tracheotomy destroys his vocal cords. Stephen Hawking, who has already lost his ability to walk, to write, who can barely move, now loses his voice completely. He can no longer speak. At all. Not one word. Most people would give up. How do you continue as a scientist, a professor, a public intellectual when you can't speak? Stephen asked a different question. How do I keep working? A computer scientist named Walt Wolters had developed a program called Equalizer for his mother-in-law who couldn't speak. When he heard about Stephen's situation, he gave him the program for free. The system worked like this. A cursor moved through the alphabet on a screen. When it reached the letter Stephen wanted, he'd click a handheld switch. Letter by letter, he'd build words. Then sentences. It was painfully slow. About 1 word per minute at first. But Stephen had his voice back. Sort of. The computer had a voice synthesizer, a robotic, American-accented voice that would speak the words he typed. The voice became iconic. Stephen could have changed it, made it sound British, more natural. He never did. That voice became my voice, he said. People recognize it. It's who I am. At first, Stephen controlled the computer with a handheld clicker. But as the ALS progressed, his hands stopped working completely. So engineers built a new system. A sensor attached to his glasses detected the tiniest movement of his cheek muscle. One of the few muscles he still controlled. A twitch to move the cursor. Another twitch to select. Think about that. A single cheek muscle. That's all he had left to communicate with the world. It was agonizingly slow. By the 2000s, he was typing about 15 words per minute. 1 word every 4 seconds. To ask someone, "How are you today?" took 20 seconds. To give a 1-hour lecture, Stephen would spend weeks preparing every word in advance. To write a scientific paper could take months. But he kept working, because the alternative, giving up, wasn't an option. 1984. Stephen decides to write a book for general audiences. Not for physicists. For everyone. A book explaining the biggest questions in the universe. Where did we come from? How did the universe begin? What are black holes? What is time? His editor at Bantam Books is skeptical. Science books don't sell, he says. Especially not complex physics. Stephen is undeterred. He starts writing. He's completely paralyzed. Can't move his arms or legs. Can't hold a pen. Can't type on a keyboard. Every single word, every single letter, is selected one at a time using that cheek muscle. 1 letter at a time. Writing A Brief History of Time took Stephen 3 years. 3 years of twitching a cheek muscle to select letters. Think about writing a text message. Now imagine writing it 1 letter at a time, for seconds per letter. That's 40 seconds for a 10-letter word. Now imagine writing a 200-page book that way. But Stephen had something most science writers don't. He could visualize complex concepts in his mind without needing to write them down. His disability had forced him to develop that skill. And he had a gift for explaining complicated ideas simply. No equations. No jargon. Just clear, elegant explanations of mind-bending concepts. Someone told me that each equation I included would have the sales, Stephen said. So I decided to have no equations at all. There's one equation in the entire book, E = mc squared. That's it. April 1988. A Brief History of Time, From the Big Bang to Black Holes is published. The publishers print a modest first run. They're not expecting much. Then something extraordinary happens. The book becomes a bestseller. Not just among scientists. Among everyone. It stays on the Sunday Times bestseller list for 237 weeks. More than 4 years. It sells 10 million copies worldwide. Gets translated into 40 languages. A book about black holes and the nature of time, written by a completely paralyzed physicist using a cheek muscle, becomes one of the most successful popular science books ever written. Stephen Hawking becomes a household name. But A Brief History of Time was just one achievement. Stephen's real legacy is his scientific work. 1974, he discovers Hawking radiation. Using quantum mechanics and Einstein's relativity together, he proves that black holes aren't completely black. They emit radiation and can eventually evaporate. This was revolutionary. It suggested that information could be destroyed by black holes, something that contradicts quantum mechanics. The black hole information paradox became one of the biggest questions in physics. 1970. Working with Roger Penrose, Stephen proves the singularity theorems, mathematical proof that the universe began with a singularity, what we call the Big Bang. 1983. With James Hartle, he develops the no-boundary proposal, a theory suggesting the universe has no boundary in imaginary time, eliminating the need for a moment of creation. All of this, done while completely paralyzed, unable to write a single equation, working entirely in his mind. Remember the diagnosis. 2 years to live at age 21. Stephen lived to 76. 55 more years. Why? Doctors still don't fully understand. Typical ALS progresses quickly. Stephen's progressed slowly, unusually slowly. Some think it was a variant of ALS. Others think it was his sheer will to live. He had 3 children, 5 grandchildren, traveled the world giving lectures, met presidents, prime ministers, and the Pope. In 2007, at age 65, he experienced zero gravity on a special aircraft. Completely paralyzed, communicating with a cheek muscle, he floated freely in the air. For a moment, he said afterward, I was Superman. He appeared on Star Trek, The Simpsons, The Big Bang Theory. Became as famous as any movie star, more famous than most. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Albert Einstein Award, and at least a dozen honorary degrees. But he never won the Nobel Prize. Because his theories, while brilliant, hadn't been experimentally verified during his lifetime. March 14, 2018. Stephen Hawking dies peacefully at his home in Cambridge. He is 76 years old. He died on Pi Day, 3/14, and on the 139th anniversary of Albert Einstein's birth. Stephen would have appreciated the symmetry. His ashes were interred in Westminster Abbey, between Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. 3 of the greatest scientific minds in history resting together. Before he died, Stephen left us with a message, one that defined his entire life. However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't just give up. Stephen Hawking was given 2 years to live. He lived 55 more. He lost the ability to walk. He revolutionized our understanding of black holes. He lost the ability to write. He became one of the most published physicists of his generation. He lost the ability to speak. He became one of the most recognizable voices in science. He was confined to a wheelchair. His mind explored the entire universe. His body had limits. His mind did not. And that's the real legacy of Stephen Hawking. Not just his scientific discoveries, but the proof, living proof, that the human spirit can transcend any physical limitation. That when you lose everything except your mind can be enough. That 2 years can become 55. That a death sentence can become a life sentence, in the best possible way. From a 21-year-old given 2 years to live, to a 76-year-old who changed how we understand the cosmos. The body failed. The mind never did. This was Stephen Hawking. And his voice, that robotic, iconic voice, still echoes across the universe he spent his life trying to understand.